Hey guys, I'm Tyler, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about major issues with the First Gen Tundra. There's not a lot of super severe ones, but we're going to go through them. Whether you're looking to buy a truck or maintain your current one, here's some issues you can look out for. The most severe issue with the First Gen Tundra is the lower ball joints. Now this is going to affect all models of the Tundra. From 2000 to 2006, they're all going to have lower ball joint issues. Double cab, single cab, regular cab, V8, V6, all of these trucks will have this ball joint. So the problem with the ball joint is the way that it sits. If it fails, everything just falls apart. It's a very catastrophic failure. The ball joint completely separates out of the socket, and then you end up with a truck basically where the tire just comes off the front and hangs and dives into the fender. There are entire Facebook groups dedicated to this failure because it is prevalent not only in the Tundra, but the first gen Tacoma and the third gen 4Runner as well. The protocol here is to replace with all OEM equipment and torque to spec. So what that means is you're looking at getting an OEM ball joint, getting new OEM bolts for it, and then torquing to spec. You can even put Loctite on the bolt. If you're wondering what this looks like, I actually do have a video showing how to replace it. It's on my O1, and all the torque specs are included at the end of the video for each and every model year. To order ball joints, go to McGeorge Toyota, the consensus online parts dealer for OEM Toyota parts. And overall, you're looking at replacing these about every 100,000 miles. If you're harder on your vehicle, you're probably going to be looking at a service interval closer to 50,000 miles, 60,000 miles. We're not sure exactly how reliable the OEM ones are that are being produced now. The ones that are originally on the truck we're seeing lasting upwards of 200,000 miles. Now there is some debate. OEM are the most expensive ball joints by far. Really none of the other aftermarket companies have a proven option. Moog just went through a recall and there's documented failures of the 555 ball joints. And I wouldn't trust any ball joint really other than OEM. That seems to be the one that's having the most success. If you are enjoying this information, find it useful, please hit the thumbs up button. That helps me out and it helps push this video out to more people. Thank you. The next failure to watch out for is the timing belt. This is also going to affect all models of the first gen Tundra, and if this fails, your engine's probably going to go with it. This is a 100,000 mile service interval. You can do it yourself. You can have a mechanic do it. You want the Aisin kit. I'll have a link to that in the description. You should also do the water pump at the same time. The timing belt should be replaced every 100,000 miles or every 10 years approximately. If you don't know when it was last replaced, when you buy your truck, to replace it now so then you know, and you don't have to do it for another 100,000 miles and you're not risking the engine failing. Rust. Oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how many rusty first gen Tundras I have seen. If you are in the Rust Belt, if you are on the East Coast, if you're buying a used truck that has spent time there, you should absolutely inspect your truck for rust. These trucks will rust to a point where they become undrivable and will not pass inspection, and you do not want to be the owner when that happens. There's a recall out for this. Some people are still getting their frames replaced by Toyota. You can contact your local dealership, see if you can get them to qualify. Some people can still get it. Some people seem to struggle and the dealerships aren't working with them. I would not buy a rusty truck. There's degrees of rust. Body rust is not as severe as frame rust, although if your body's rotting, the frame's probably rotting too. If it is all discolored, rotting, and uneven, it's probably not a truck you want to buy. You want to be able to see some black on the undercarriage, or at the very least, the frame and everything is all still the correct shape. If it's bubbly, rusty, it looks painted over, beware. This might be a truck that you don't want to buy. Exhaust manifolds. So this is a problem that I actually have on my truck currently. Ever since I bought it, it's had a slight flutter when it starts and when I put it under heavy throttle. You can actually hear it in this clip right here. So generally what this is caused by is there is a crack in the actual metal of the exhaust manifold. Occasionally it's a gasket leak, but on the Tundras, often they crack. You can replace with a new exhaust manifold. You can try and plug weld the current exhaust manifold, or you can upgrade to aftermarket options like shorties or long tube headers. This isn't a super detrimental problem, but it is very common. The way you can tell it is usually when you warm up the truck, you hear that that's air rushing out of the header, and then you might be able to hear it under heavy acceleration also. The noise should change with temperature. If it's changing with the temperature of the engine and the flutter goes away as the engine warms up, generally that's going to be an exhaust manifold. The reason this happens is that the metals heat up and over time they expand, they contract, expand, contract, cracks form. Not a very severe issue. Most likely you're just looking at a drop in gas mileage, or if the leak gets severe enough, you might get a check engine light. Carrier bearing. Again, not a super severe issue, but fairly common, especially as these trucks age. These trucks are getting very old. At 20 years, there are things like carrier bearings that are just going to start going out, and they're going to start going out for a lot of trucks. The carrier bearing sits along the drive shaft. It holds it in place and reduces driveline vibration while you're driving. So as the bearing either rots, wears down, loosens up, you're going to be feeling some kind of driveline vibration. It may be speed specific, it may be RPM specific. It'll be similar to front U-joint issues. It's just going to feel rumbly. It could be a little noisier. My carrier bearing is also just starting to wear down. So I've noticed when I'm in like the 70 mile per hour range and I'm doing a passing maneuver on the freeway, trying to get up to 77, 80 relatively quickly, the truck has a stumble and a rumble when I get on the throttle. So I get on the throttle and the response feels a little delayed, and that's just the drive shaft kind of vibrating. The carrier bearing's moving like this. The drive shaft moves a little. It's a little rumbly, and so you can feel that. The truck's not going to blow up, but I do need to replace the carrier bearing and keep the driveline in good shape. So the radiator. So the radiator on the first gen Tundras is responsible for helping cool the transmission. Now, if the radiator gets old, lines start bursting, it basically breaks and fails. What you'll see happen usually is that coolant will start getting into the transmission. There's ways to detect this somewhat early if all of a sudden your transmission is slipping, or there's a pink milkshake when you take out the transmission dipstick. Instead of being red or dark red, it's like milky, frothy pink. That's a problem. That's a radiator. That's a coolant getting into the transmission issue. One kind of way, there's no real perfect service interval, but once your radiator's old, it needs replacing. If you buy a truck, you don't know when the radiator was replaced, replace it. You can upgrade, or you can just get OEM one. One kind of gauge of how old a radiator is what the plastic looks like. So if it's fresh, black, shiny plastic, you're good, but if it's starting to look old and brown, or if it's cracking at all, that radiator needs to get replaced. A note on the 0506 pickups, those are the ones with the V8 and the VVT-i. They have a secondary air system. The injection pump seems to be a common point of failure. And not a deal breaker, kind of a smaller fix, but you might be chasing emission codes and fixes for a while. Some people have gone so far as to install a bypass kit instead of trying to deal with this system. It doesn't seem to be a deal breaker. The 0506 truck's really nice because they do have more horsepower and torque, but you might be looking at a little more issues on the top end of the engine, getting that secondary air system to work from time to time. Another issue on the first gen Tundra is the four-wheel drive systems are all actuated electronically. So if the actuators for the front diff go out, you won't be able to get into four-wheel drive. Sometimes it just needs servicing or cleaning, but it can be a pain to deal with and complete. So your four-wheel drive light might come on, but the truck's not really engaging, or the light is flashing. That means you're having problems with your four-wheel drive system. Usually it's just with engaging. Once the system's running, there don't seem to be as many problems, but you'll definitely notice if there is a problem. The light will flash, the four-wheel drive light will flash. And the 4 high and 4 low are different actuators, so your 4 high could work and your 4 low couldn't. You get stuck in 4 low, you might have to tap it with a hammer. So I see that happen from time to time. Just because it's not a manually engaged 4-wheel drive system, it's a little more finicky, but it saves a lot of space in terms of the seating arrangement up front. And if you do have 4-wheel drive and it's working, or you just got it working, make sure you put it in 4-wheel drive every month or so to keep that system working well. The reason the shifters go out is not because they're old, it's actually because they're not getting used enough. They're just getting clogged up, they're not getting used, they're not getting checked. So once you have a working 4-wheel drive system, make sure to actually go use your vehicle. So these are common, and I think part of the reason they're common is also because there's exhaust leak issues that are common. The manifold leak issue is common on the first gen Tundra. Again, not a drastic thing, but fairly common on all vehicles, and the first gen Tundra included. I have noticed that cheaper replacement parts may be less effective. A lot of people who cheap out seem to not have their O2 sensor codes go away. And the code can be related to your exhaust manifold leak or other internal engine leaks like a coolant leak or a engine oil leak that's getting into the engine and going out the exhaust, and the O2 sensor's unhappy, got dirty. Not an expensive fix. I actually ignored mine because once my O2 sensor code came on, the truck started getting better gas mileage, so I never got around to fixing it. Didn't make sense for me. Also, the brakes on the first gen Tundra all throughout are considered kind of small. Especially the earlier models had very tiny brakes, and the rotors were prone to warping. So all the brake systems on the Tundras overlap. You can swap them out. So if you want to upgrade to larger calipers, you can, but they're just a little bit small. You can also go for the GX460 brake upgrade. That's documented on Facebook. You can get machined calipers added to your vehicle as long as you're running 17-inch wheels, and then basically you're running a GX460 brake setup. Here's a note on the transmission. For some of the first gen Tundras, the owner's manual has the incorrect fluid capacity listed for the transmission, the automatic transmission. So these are your V8 pickups with automatic transmissions. and your V6s. If you follow the owner's manual, it says you only need to put 2.1 quarts in if you're doing a drain and fill, which is pretty common maintenance. It's more like 4 quarts for a drain and fill. So you would drain out 4 quarts. You should put 4 back in. If you're only following the owner's manual, it just says to put 2.1 back in. You will underfill your transmission drastically. Your transmission will have a tough time. It'll be overheating more. I've actually experienced this. I followed my owner's manual because I still have it, and then I was climbing up to a camping spot and the transmission kept overheating. I refilled it correctly and I have not had that issue since, but that was a scary moment. You don't want to damage the transmission on these trucks. The early first gens actually had transmission issues. There's a recall, service bulletin for it. So you want to take care of the transmissions. So between the radiator and drain and fills, make sure any transmission maintenance you're doing is done correctly and done well with high quality fluids. The First Gen Tundra overall, very reliable pickup, especially by the time you take care of your lower ball joints, take care of your timing belt, maybe fix an exhaust manifold leak. There's really not much else going wrong on these trucks. There's not a lot of rear end issues. There's not a lot of head gasket issues, rear main seal, oil leaks, none of that. These engines are very robust. I'm a big fan of this drivetrain, but you're going to notice that stuff goes out, usually smaller stuff. Front suspension bushings are also prone to wear. These are old pickups, so there's things that it's going to feel like it might be an expensive truck to maintain if the previous owner didn't maintain it at all. After 20 years, these trucks are going to have some things that need replacing. So hopefully, if you're buying a used Tundra, definitely go for one that's been maintained. If they've been well maintained and taken care of, those engines and transmissions, those rear diffs are going to last you a long time, and you can just keep replacing little parts like a front suspension bushing, a lower ball joint every 100,000 miles. These trucks are very solid and I highly recommend it. Any relevant parts list will be in the description of this video. You can check that out and let me know what you think in the comments. So thanks for watching. Let me know if I missed any common problems. I did a lot of research for this video, and thank you guys so much for watching.